So as you can see, we are beginning a new series today in the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, I know probably in my life and in many of your lives, you've thought about the book of Ecclesiastes, read it, and you're sort of like, that's sort of a negative book, but it's really not negative. It is practical, it is realistic, and I believe that when you properly understand it, it's aspirational. It inspires us to live the good life, the good godly life. Now, when we say the good life, in America, we often think about the American dream. Now, the American dream, that started 250 years ago, celebrating our 250th anniversary this year. But that American dream has really changed a lot in the past few decades. The American dream originally was the idea that everybody's given equal opportunity to work hard and do better for themselves and for their families. And obviously, the American dream was not fulfilled for everybody. I mean, if you just look at our history on slavery and things, it was not equal opportunity for all. But fortunately, the Constitution was built in such a way that it could be changed and opportunities opened up. And I think America still is affording opportunity more than most nations ever have. But it seems like after World War II that the American dream changed in a materialistic direction. Instead of hard work, the American dream has become, for a lot of people, earning or gaining more material things by hardly working. It's this mindset that I'll just do whatever it takes. I'll cheat, I'll lie, I'll steal, I'll get... The goal in life is to get more stuff. Or it's a governmental redistribution of wealth where we all are equally wealthy. But it's become sort of a mindset of a materialism. More and more stuff will bring more and more satisfaction. You just watch television, internet, the new and improved, you've got to have this if your life's going to have meaning. The book of Ecclesiastes teaches us something totally different. Now, it doesn't teach us necessarily that all this stuff is bad. It teaches us the way that we look at life and we look at stuff and the way that we use it. That's what makes the stuff good or bad. And in the book of Ecclesiastes, we are seeing that overall, over all of these chapters, we're going to see this is the way to live the good life God's way. That is enjoying God's gifts to us, here's the key, for God's glory. It's that God's glory part that enables us then to enjoy them rightly, not wrongly. Now today we're looking at Ecclesiastes chapter 1. This is what I'm calling the reality check. In Ecclesiastes chapter 1, we are going to see what life in a sin-fallen world is like. The writer is speaking from that vantage point, not all the conceptual could-be's, but the reality of what is. Even if you're going to live a good, godly life, these realities are just a part of our lives. And that's what we're going to see today in Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Three things in particular. First one, the good life is vanity. The good life is vanity. Let me read verses 1 through 7. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man from all of his labor in which he toils under the sun? One generation passes away and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. The sun also rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it arose. The wind goes toward the south and turns around to the north. The wind whirls about continually and comes again on its circuit. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. Now, in verse 1, we see the identity hinted at of the writer of Ecclesiastes. Now, we talked last week. The Holy Spirit is the one who inspired, but this person is the one who actually put pen to scroll, pen to paper. Who is it? The son of David, king of Jerusalem. Now, we know David was king of Jerusalem. Does that mean that the son was king of Jerusalem? And the answer is going to be yes, and we're going to see that a little bit later. And for that reason, a lot of people, scholars, preachers, myself, believe King Solomon, the son that followed David in the monarchy, I think he is the one who is actually used by the Holy Spirit to write this. You say, why him? Why not a later grandson or somebody like that? Because we read in the Bible itself that at the beginning of King Solomon's reign, God said to King Solomon, said, hey, anything, what do you want? And he said, wisdom. I want wisdom. And God said, because you've asked for wisdom, I'll give you an overflow of wisdom, but I will also give you wealth. And we'll see a little bit later that King Solomon uses both, the wisdom and the wealth. God uses it in his life in order to bring about the book of Ecclesiastes. So I'm going to contend that King Solomon is the preacher. The preacher, a Hebrew word that simply means a gathering. That he is the one who's proclaiming to the gathering of readers. Now, the key word is vanity. We're going to see this over and over throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. The word vanity. And there's two things I want us to understand about vanity. Number one, vanity is all about truth. It is seeing the world the way the world is, truth. Vanity of vanities, verse 2. All is vanity. Now, when we think about vanity in the English language, we often think about someone who is vain, someone who's arrogant, prideful. They say, look at me, I'm beautiful. Look at me, I'm smart. Look at me. And we say, oh, that is such a vain person. They are just vanity. But that's not the Hebrew word. The Hebrew word is a word that means simply breath or vapor. Breath or vapor. Have you ever gone out into really cold weather and the warm, moist air in your lungs, when you exhale it through your nose or through your mouth, you see it go out? Have you ever seen that? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that's vapor, all right? Now think about how short-lived that vapor is. That vapor just gets about this far away from you, and it just sort of dissipates and disappears. In essence, that's what we have Solomon telling us. Your life is like a vapor. It is so short. And young people are like, are you kidding me? It takes forever to get to my birthday, to Christmas, to any other thing that I get what I want. But you know, when you get older, like some of us in the room, you're like, oh man, that was just like yesterday. Life is like a vapor. And that vapor also, when it goes out of your mouth, if you try to grab it, can you contain it? Can you grab it all, put it in a container, and then suck it back in? No, a vapor is vaporous. It's impossible to fully control. You might be able to fan it a little bit and get it to move in a different direction, but you cannot fully control a vapor. And the same thing about life. Not only is life, according to King Solomon, is it short in longevity, but life is unpredictable and so uncontrollable in so many ways. That's what life is. Even the good life, a good, godly life. When you get down the road, you're going to look back and you're going to think, where did it go? See, I'm old enough now, I got gray hair. I'm 56. I think back to my childhood and I think, my goodness, that was just yesterday. I remember it vividly. And then also it feels like it was a totally different life, a different world. I remember when Becky and I walked down, well, she walked down the aisle at Calvary Baptist Church in Somerset. I was down at the end waiting on her. And that was yesterday. And we'd had 3 children since yesterday. And 6 grandkids and the 7th on the way since yesterday. Do you all know, I mean, you with gray hair or no hair in the room this morning, do you know what I'm talking about? That is what King Solomon is saying. And it's just the truth. I get that the little children in the room don't understand this. They don't understand a lot of things. But if you've got any life about you whatsoever, you know exactly. This is the truth. Vanity is about the truth. It is a breath. It is so short-lived and so unpredictable and uncontrollable, even if you are living a good, godly life. And that leads us to the second thing. Vanity is about time. Time. Look at verse 4. One generation passes away. Then you get another generation. Verse 5, the sun also rises. Verse 6, the wind goes toward the south. Verse 7, all the rivers run into the sea. What he's doing here is he's giving us 4 illustrations. And he begins with a generation. You got generation after generation after generation. You know, I've read somewhere that 20 years is a generation because it takes about 20 years for a baby to grow up to get to the age where they reproduce and have their own children. So 20 years is a generation. Imagine how many thousands of generations we have since Adam. That's a bunch of generations. Now, what King Solomon is doing is he's using these 3 nature illustrations related to the idea of generation after generation after generation. The first one's pertaining to the sun. There in verse 5. He says that the sun, it rises in the morning, it goes through its circuit, and then it goes down. And then it's almost like it just sort of wraps right back around, and the next day it does this. It rises in the morning, goes through its circuit, then it goes down. Guess what the next day happens? Anybody? It rises in the morning, goes through its circuit, and then it goes back down. And the idea is that every generation before King Solomon, they saw the same sun doing the same thing that he sees each morning when he wakes up. And then he talks next in verse 6, he's talking about the wind. The wind blows, and the way he describes it, it heads to the south, and then it circuits back up to the north, and then it comes back around. Of course, we know jet streams and all that kind of stuff, but it's still very similar. Weather patterns sort of track all around the world, and then they track all around. And it's this cyclical nature of weather and wind. And what he's saying is that generations past, they felt wind blowing through their hair, just like Solomon felt wind blowing through his hair. And then generations later are going to feel that same wind blowing through their hair, even though Solomon says, I'm not going to be here to feel it anymore. You see that passage of time that he's talking about? The third one is water. The snow caps, they melt. They form little trickles. They go into the streams. They go into creeks. They go into rivers. They go into the ocean. Then you get the evaporation process where they come back up into the sky, that moisture, and then it falls again as snow on the snow caps, and then the whole thing starts over and over and over. All three illustrations are saying the same thing. The earth continues to do its thing, and one generation gets to experience it, and then they're dead and gone. The next generation gets to experience it, and then they're dead and gone. And Solomon's saying, my generation's going to die off, and then the next generation's going to get to see the same thing I've seen. Isn't that the truth? Beautiful weather this morning. Beautiful. And in the future, barring the Lord's return, my children and the children's children and the children's children are going to have beautiful days like we had today. But I won't be here with them to see it. Why? Because the reality is that my life is going to be so short that if I'm blessed with 20 more years, I'm going to look back and say, where did those 20 years go? And that's the way life is. And so the good life, the bad life, and the good life, it's all vanity. It's not that it's arrogance. It's that it's a breath, and then it's gone. Now, that being said, what do we do in this brief good life? Secondly, the good life is hard work. That's what we do, a lot of hard work. Look at verse 8 through verse 11. All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Notice a dissatisfaction. The eye can never see enough. The ears can never hear enough. We just never get everything we want. That's what he's talking about right there. So verse 9, that which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. And there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come by those who will come after. Now, in here, I want you to notice the key word is labors. All things are full of labors. In other words, every event in life, every aspect that you experience, everything that you do is laborious. It is full of labor. Have you ever thought about that? Everything you do is labor intensive. Even being lazy is laborious. I can give you an example. When I was a child, my parents, they started the greenhouse business in our backyard. That's where the greenhouse business was. My dad, I'm 8, 9, 10, 11. My dad wanted me to come in from school and go to work. I'm not sure he understood this. School was work, right? He wanted me to come home from work and go to work. I didn't want to do that, so what did I do? I would get off the bus, I would sneak into the house, I would change my clothes, I would sneak out the front door. Why would I sneak out the front door? Because Dad's in the backyard. Exactly. I would sneak out the front door, I would play. A lot of times I played football with the bushes along the front of the house, and I was very careful not to throw the football past the house. It was one of those long ranches, because if it went past the house, guess who would see the football dingling along the grass? Dad in the backyard. So I had to work really, really hard not to go to work. You all know what I'm talking about? And that's what he's saying. Everything, even being lazy, takes a lot of hard work. And I see in our society today a lot of people who work really hard and really well at not working hard at all. everything. And then there's two truths that I think we can pull from what he describes when it pertains to this work. Number one, work is exhausting. I told you this is a reality check for life, right? Even in the good life, work is exhausting. Notice again, verse 8, all things are full of labor. Now the Hebrew word there for labor, it means to be weary, to strive, to struggle. So this is a negative connotation for labor. It is exhausting. And that's what he's trying to communicate right here. When did labor become exhausting? According to the Bible in Genesis 3. You remember Adam and Eve, they ate of the forbidden fruit that the serpent had tempted Eve, and then Eve tempted Adam, and there were 3 curses that took place. 1, the serpent was cursed to crawl on his belly. 2, Eve was cursed that she would have pain in childbirth, and then there would be this tension between her and her husband. And then 3, Adam was cursed that there would be tension between he and the environment. Thorns and thistles, and by the sweat of the brow of your head, you will do your work. No longer is Adam going to be able to tiptoe through the Garden of Eden and go, doo, 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 doo. Look at this, I got all my lunch right here. Didn't even have to work at it. No, he's going to have to sweat. He's going to have to farm hard with all kinds of weeds, using a hoe and whatever it takes to get the weeds out so that there can be food production. That's when work became exhausting for everybody. And the thing is you can work at something you don't like. You can work at something just to be lazy. Or you can work at something that you do like, but even if you work at what you do like, it's still exhausting. I'm a pastor. I love to study the Bible. God has just given me that, that thing. So you all pay my salary so I can do what I love to do. But especially on Thursdays when I'm doing my final studies and manuscripting and everything for this Sunday's message, when I get home on Thursday, Becky's like, why are you so quiet? Why are you this way? I'm like, because I'm exhausted. What'd you do? Physically? Nothing. I sat behind my computer screen all day long. But my mind is so exhausted that my body's exhausted as well. Do you know what I'm talking about? And it's not just mental exhaustion that wears the body out. I grew up in the greenhouse, garden center business. I hid from Dad when I was in elementary school, but when I became a young man in my 20s, I actually came to the point where I enjoyed it. You got to do something, might as well be a garden center. So I loved plants, learning, studying, watching them grow, to the point now that I'm not in that business anymore, but I've got a 1-acre yard. So I am landscaping my yard anytime we're not out of town chasing grandkids. And in my yard, if it's my day off, I'll spend 10, 12 hours in the yard working. I love it. And when I come in, I collapse, exhausted from what I love to do. You see, even if it's good stuff, it's still exhausting. And that's what we see that the king is telling us, King Solomon. He's saying, yeah, work is exhausting. All things are full of labor. But the second thing he's teaching us is that work is endless. You're like, really? One word, exhausting, the other one, endless? Yes, it is. Notice what he says in verse 9. That which has been is what will be, and that which is done is what will be done, and there's nothing new under the sun. That which has been, in other words, all the way back at the very beginning, guess what God created man to do? Come on now. Work. Exactly. Even before sin. Even before it became toilsome, burdensome. We were created to work. And we understand 6 days we work, and on the 7th we rest. But all the way back to Adam and Eve, they work. Now, we work differently now, but it's still in basically the same categories. You remember Adam? They had to have food, right? After sin, it wasn't just walk through the garden and pluck the food off the trees. Now, he's got to be a farmer. He's got to be a herdsman. He's got to do these jobs. Today, if we're going to eat, what do we have to have in our society? We got to have farmers. We got to have herdsmen, things like that. If there's going to be food on the table, there's got to be some farmers. It's the same. Now, we do it differently. We got big machines that do it a whole lot faster, fewer people required, that kind of stuff. But it's still the same kind of stuff. You think about Adam and Eve. When they sinned, what manufacturing industry began at that point? Clothing industry. Come on, people. When they sinned, the clothing industry done. The first outfit was made from the hide of an animal that God killed in order to cover over because they were ashamed because of their nakedness. Now, we've got a clothing industry today that's billions upon billions of dollars. A lot of it needs a whole lot more material than what they give you. But nonetheless, It is a clothing industry, same kind of work that was all the way back there. Parenting, it hasn't changed a whole lot ever since Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve had the babies, boys. Guess what? They were hungry. Mama had to nurse them. Now, nursing during the day, I'm assuming, is not too difficult, but in the middle of the night, I know this personally. Becky, baby's crying. I can't feed him. Go. You know, Adam's doing the same thing all the way back then. Hasn't changed a bit in all these millennia. You got these babies, once they eat, what happens a little while later? They poo. Exactly. Mom and Dad's got to clean it up back in Adam and Eve's day. We still got to clean it up today. Hasn't changed a bit, has it? When they cry, they fight with each other. You got to get your mediator. You got to get in between the two boys while they're fighting with each other. You see, work is endless. Now, we've got technology that changes how we do it, but it's still basically the same stuff that we do. And that's what the writer is saying. Solomon is saying, look, even in the good life, do it God's way. It's still endless, and some days it's exhausting. Like it or not. That's just the facts of life. You know, verse 10, he brings in another concept. He says, is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. Now what he's saying here, I think he's picking up on this idea. Like, I've already said, we've got new technology. So we may do the work differently, but it's always the same kind of work. Is there anything new? There's something about in this fallen world, in our sinful nature, we want new. Do y'all understand what I'm talking about? We want new, except for you weirdos who go to antique malls and you call it antiques. I call it junk, old junk. But nonetheless, my wife likes antiques. That's why it's a little personal comment there. Here's the thing. Our sin nature wants something new. And if we're not careful, we'll let that desire for something new lead us to do things that are wrong. For instance, how many times have I met men and women who say, I am unhappy, I want a new spouse? Well, let me tell you, and I've told some, you get you a new spouse, eventually your new spouse, the new's going to rub off and they're going to be old too. How many times have I heard children say, my parents are terrible. They don't understand me at all. I need new parents. Our children, I think it was our daughter, told us that one time. I was like, you go ahead and you tell the school that you need some new parents. They'll give you some new parents, all right? And then you'll never be able to come back to us. And she's like, ooh. You know, kids just simply think, if I had new parents, I'd get everything I want. And it won't take them long before they find out, no, your new parents are going to be just like your old parents if they care and love you for you. You know, I need a new boss. I hate going to work because I need a new boss. Well, here's the thing. You get you a new boss, and you may like him eventually for a while, but eventually that new boss is going to have responsibilities. It's going to force him to, you know, come down if you're doing things that are wrong, and then you're not going to like your new boss. Do you all know what in a church environment is called the honeymoon period? The honeymoon period is when you get a new pastor. Everybody's like, whoo, he's new, I love him, I love him, I love him. But you know what happens in, it's according to who the pastor is, anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. The honeymoon's over because the new has rubbed off, the shiny's rubbed off, and now you realize he's just a pastor. You see, our sin nature wants the new. And we think the new is going to cause us to be satisfied. It's not going to work that way in a sin-fallen world. Life, even the good life, is short, unpredictable, and full of a bunch of hard work. And that's just the facts of it. Would you all agree with Solomon in his assessment of life? You ever found something that was so new and so innovative that you were like, oh, I will forever be satisfied now? I'd like to know what it is. You tell me after church someday if you have found that thing, because I don't think it exists. Folks, the good life, it's hard work, exhausting work, it's endless work, and still can be the good life. Now that leads us to the third thing. The good life is not always so good. And that's what Solomon is teaching us in verses 12 through 18. So I, the preacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem. There's where we learn that it wasn't just the son of a king, but the writer is also a king himself. So that's why Solomon fits this description best. Verse 13, and I set my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven. This burdensome task God has given to the sons of men by which they may be exercised. Notice what basically Solomon calls life, a burdensome task. There's a lot of burdens, right? I mean, we try our hardest not to go to the hospital, but you get old enough, you're probably going to go to the hospital, and it's going to be a burden. It's going to be a medical burden. It's going to be a physical burden. It's going to be a financial burden. You know, life, even when you live it for God's glory, has days that it's quite burdensome, right? That's what he's saying. Verse 14, I have seen all of the works that are done under the sun, and indeed all is vanity and grasping for the wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be numbered. I communed with my heart, saying, look, I have attained greatness and have gained more wisdom than all who were before me in Jerusalem. My heart has understood great wisdom and knowledge, and I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. And I perceive that this also is grasping for the wind. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. So I want you to notice in verse 13 what King Solomon does is he sets out for us his purpose in basically this whole book. He is saying in verse 13, I have set my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under the heaven. In other words, I'm going to, remember Solomon? Super wealthy. I'm going to do as many things as I can physically do as a human being in life. And God has given me this wisdom to analyze what I do. And what's he analyzing it for? Do I find meaning in this? Do I find meaning in that? Do I find purpose in this? Do I find complete satisfaction in that? Do I find satisfaction in this? And that's what the book of Ecclesiastes is. It is Solomon analyzing his exceptionally blessed life and trying to figure out what brings meaning to life, what brings satisfaction, and what does not. And that's his plan we see in verse 13. Then what we see him describing in the rest of chapter 1 are 5 areas for his consideration. And in these 5 areas, what I want you to understand is that these areas are just areas that we all experience, think about, achieve, or strive for. And in and of themselves, they may not necessarily be bad. They may not necessarily be good. They just are. But here's what the book of Ecclesiastes is going to teach us. How you view these areas and others, and what you do in these areas will determine if you're living a good life or a bad life. It's your perception and your actions that determine whether it's good or not. So what are these 5 areas that we see here? 1, work. You could even put career if you want to. Work can be good or bad. Notice in verse 14, I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and indeed all is vanity and grasping for the wind. Now earlier we saw the word labors. That was a negative connotated word. It means weary, striving, struggle. This word in the Hebrew simply means accomplishments. And what King Solomon is saying is, I have had a blessed life. I have accomplished all of these things in life. And what was his final assessment of all of the accomplishments of his life? What did he say there in verse 14? And indeed, all of it is vanity and grasping for the breath that I see, grasping for the wind. So, if you think that your career is going to bring you satisfaction, that you are going to climb the rungs of the ladder of your career, whatever career it is, and you're going to get to the top, and you're going to be like, I'm finally there. I have reached a place. You're going to get to the top of that ladder and realize leaning on the other wall is another ladder. Your accomplishments in life will never give you complete satisfaction. And they may be good accomplishments, but the accomplishments of this world will never give you complete satisfaction. And that's what he's saying. Secondly, circumstances. Circumstances can be good or they can be bad. Verse 15, what is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be numbered. Now, these are two illustrations or metaphors that he's talking about. And the picture is that like a straight road is what you want, but King Solomon says, but the road keeps crooking this way. What you want is a full bucket, but the bucket isn't full, and I just can't get it filled up. And it's the idea that what I want, circumstantially, I will not always get. Even a rich man like Solomon is acknowledging the fact that I can't control all the circumstances. Circumstances may be good, may be bad. That's not the issue at this point. It's just the fact that I can't control all the circumstances in my life. And that's just the way it is. Number 3, fame, or you want to put a slash, fortune. Either one would be fine or both combined. Fame can be good or bad. Notice first part of verse 16. I communed with my heart. Now that means I have thought internally. I have analyzed my life. I self-analyzed. And what did he conclude? He said, look, I have attained greatness. Remember? All wisdom. He's a smart dude. And a rich one. And he understood when it comes to comparing my life with other people's lives, my life is blessed. I mean, I have attained greatness. But what was his final conclusion? This whole chapter. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. It's not that the fact that people in Africa in his day had heard about King Solomon and all of his wisdom, as we know from the biblical text. It's not that he had stables and palaces and was head of a government and all these kinds of things that everybody's like, ooh, oh. It's not that that is necessarily bad, that his fame is bad, his fortune is bad. He's just saying it doesn't satisfy my soul. And we live in a day and a time today that says that fame and fortune and influence, this is what brings satisfaction. Have you ever wondered why we have so many internet or social media influencers? I mean, they are all over the stinking place. And they are the expert in this field, and the expert in that field, and the expert in that field, and they're not experts of anything. But what they are is very good at getting people to watch them. And then as their views go up, then YouTube or TikTok or Facebook or somebody sends them a check and they start getting money off of their ability to get eyeballs to look at them. And yet what fascinates me, sadly so, is on my news feed, I get news from all over the world. And there are people who are media influencers that have over 1 million viewers. And the news is they committed suicide. Why? I mean, they're getting everything they want. But what they want doesn't satisfy. Think about politics. I remember years ago reading a quote from one of the Rockefellers. I forgot which one it was. One of the Rockefellers was asked, you have earned $1 million. What do you want now? And the Rockefeller said, I want to earn my next $1 million. And what does that tell you? Money doesn't satisfy. Why do we have politicians today who are millionaires, multimillionaires, billionaires? Why do we have politicians today that have all the money in the world? It's not because they're satisfied with their money. It's because they want more than just money. So now they're seeking power. It never satisfies. King Solomon lived it. He knows it. He had the wealth. He had the power. And he said of all of it, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Number 4, education. Education can be good or it can be bad. Verse 16, he says, I have gained more wisdom than all who were before me. Skip a little. My heart has understood great wisdom and knowledge. And then verse 17, and I set my heart to know wisdom. Do you see those 3 words? Wisdom, wisdom, wisdom. Knowledge. Smart dude. Smartest dude ever. And yet, vanity of vanities, it's all vanity. I know some parents who think that if they get their kids the best education possible, get them an Ivy League education so they can get themselves a great paying job, so they can buy this and that and more and this and that and do these experiences, and they will be so happy. And yet every day you can look in the newspaper, people who achieved everything that parents, even Christian parents, want for their children commit suicide. Why? Because it doesn't satisfy. I had one young man in my previous church who had gotten a full ride scholarship. I can't remember if it was to Harvard or to Princeton. And when I talked to him, I said, you need to be very careful choosing to go there. Because an education is good, but the wrong education can be very destructive in your life. And he wound up going to a Tennessee state school. I don't know if it had anything to do with my counsel, but I am here to tell you, just getting what the world says is the best education so you can get the best jobs does not mean the best life. And Solomon is teaching us that. And lastly, number 5, entertainment. Entertainment can be good or bad. Verse 17, he says not only in verse 17 had he acquired all this knowledge and wisdom, but he says, and also to know madness and folly. I perceive that this, madness and folly, also is grasping for the wind. Madness and folly, both of the Hebrew words mean foolishness. I call it entertainment because probably the craziest thing in our culture is our entertainment. Millions, billions upon billions of dollars spent for entertainment. America, they are entertaining us to death. It reminds me of the Romans and the circuses back in the day. Give them bread, give them entertainment, and we can control them. They are entertaining us to death, and what they're entertaining us with is nothing but madness and folly. Music. You think about the music if you listen to. What's the content of the lyrics of your songs that you're listening to? What TV shows and movies are you watching? What internet sites are you looking at? What comedians are you paying to go listen to? What vacations and where are they? And what's the environment around you? Madness and folly, billions upon billions of dollars every year. Now, that doesn't mean there's not good entertainment. There's Christian music, there's Christian movies and TV shows and Christian comics, and but it is minute in comparison. Becky and I even bemoan sometimes, you can't even go up to Nashville for an entertainment date because most of the stuff is filth. And I'm not one of those guys who's a Puritan who says you can't watch Prime Video. That's what I've got, Prime Video. Becky and I like watch detective shows and things. But it never fails. If it's a series and there's 3, 4, 5 different seasons going on, we never can get to the end, it seems like, because eventually the series becomes so perverted, I'm like, I'm done. That's the money that's spending the billions to entertain us with madness and folly. This is not new. Even Solomon was testing the edges of madness and folly. And you know what he said? Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. So here's the thing. Chapter 1 is a wake-up call. It's a reality check that lets you understand that there is nothing in this world. It could be good stuff or bad stuff. There's nothing in this world that satisfies completely. There's only one. And he's out of this world. That's our Creator. And the thing we're going to learn through this series in the book of Ecclesiastes is when we put our Creator first, then His Spirit in us will guide us through what we can mess with and what we can't mess with in this world. And the things that we can deal with, how we look at these things and use these things. Because real satisfaction is when we fulfill our created purpose in glorifying God. Learning what are God's gifts and how can I enjoy them to the glory of God. Now this morning as a Christian, you may be thinking in your mind, I have sort of felt a little sting this morning that I am participating in things that I know are not godly. And they're bringing me temporary pleasure. But it's not giving me the good life God has created and saved me for. If you're a Christian, you need to understand you're a child of God. Just like we sort of discipline and teach our children, He is still disciplining and teaching us. Now, we can listen and obey, or we can refuse to listen to His Spirit and His Word. If you realize there's areas in your life and you want the good life that He offers, then confess it. Say, I'm sorry I've been doing these things. Let your Spirit help me stop and start doing what you want me to do. Now, if you're not a Christian here this morning, you've already misprioritized your life. You're prioritizing everything around you. When you put your faith in Jesus, what you're saying is, Jesus, I want you. I want God, my Creator, to be first. And then guide me with your gifts, your guidance, to glorify you through the rest of my sometimes burdensome life. That's the good life we're seeking. I'm going to go right down this aisle as I pray into the back. If you want to come and talk to me or one of the other pastors, my wife, lady, she'll be back there if you want to talk with her. Let's talk about what the good life really affords. Pastor Rick will be up here. But let's make sure we're living the truly biblical, godly good life.